The morning sun cast long shadows across Windsor Castle as 11-year-old Prince George stood at his bedroom window, watching the grounds come alive with activity. In just 18 months, his life would change forever. The young prince didn't know it yet, but preparations were already underway for a moment that would mark the beginning of his journey toward the throne. Behind closed doors, his parents, Prince William and Catherine, were carefully orchestrating what palace insiders would later call the most significant transition in royal protocol since Queen Elizabeth's coronation preparation. What role could be so important that it required nearly 2 years of preparation? What ancient traditions were being quietly dusted off and modernized for a new generation? And how would this decision reshape not just George's childhood, but the very future of the British monarchy? The answer lay in a centuries-old ceremony that hadn't been performed by someone so young in over 200 years. As 2026 approached, the House of Windsor was about to make history, and Prince George would be at its center. The oak-paneled study at Kensington Palace had witnessed many important conversations over the decades, but none quite like the one taking place on this crisp October morning in 2024. Prince William sat across from his private secretary, Jean-Christophe Gray, while Catherine occupied the chair by the window, her fingers wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. The autumn light filtered through the tall windows, casting a warm glow over documents spread across the mahogany desk. "Your Royal Highness," Gray began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he reviewed the papers before him, "the palace has received formal confirmation from Buckingham Palace. His Majesty has approved the proposal." William and Catherine exchanged a meaningful glance. They had been waiting for this moment for months, ever since the initial discussions had begun during the summer holidays at Balmoral. King Charles had listened carefully to their proposal, asked thoughtful questions, and promised to consider it thoroughly. Now, finally, they had their answer. "The king believes it's time," William said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of generations of royal tradition. "George is approaching the right age, and the circumstances are perfect. The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2026 will provide an ideal platform." Catherine set down her teacup and leaned forward slightly. "We've been observing George carefully over the past year," she said, her voice steady but filled with maternal concern. "His maturity during public appearances, the way he handles pressure, his natural curiosity about his future role. He's ready for this step, but we need to ensure the preparation is thorough." The decision they were discussing would fundamentally change their eldest son's relationship with the monarchy. At just 11 years old, Prince George would become the youngest royal in over 2 centuries to take on a specific ceremonial role that would prepare him for his eventual destiny as king. The role in question was that of Commonwealth Youth Ambassador, a position that would require him to represent the Crown at the 2026 Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Canada. Gray opened a thick folder and began outlining the implications. "The preparation timeline we're proposing is extensive," he explained. "We're looking at 18 months of gradual introduction to royal duties, protocol training, and carefully managed public appearances. The palace historians have been consulted, and they've confirmed that the last time someone of Prince George's age took on such responsibilities was Prince Albert Edward, later King Edward VII, in the 1850s. The comparison was not lost on William and Catherine. Edward VII had been just 10 years old when he began formal preparation for his royal duties under the watchful eye of Queen Victoria. However, the world of 2024 was vastly different from Victorian Britain. Social media, global connectivity, and intense public scrutiny meant that every aspect of George's preparation would need to be carefully considered and managed. "The security implications alone are significant," Gray continued, turning to another section of his notes. "Protection officers will need additional training, protocols will need updating, and will need to coordinate with multiple government agencies across the Commonwealth nations George will eventually visit." Catherine had spent countless hours researching and consulting with child psychologists about the impact such responsibilities might have on George's development. "We've spoken with Dr. Sarah Chen at the Institute of Child Development," she said. "She's assured us that with proper support and gradual introduction, children of George's age can handle significant responsibilities without negative psychological impact. In fact, having a clear sense of purpose can be beneficial for his development." The conversation turned to practical matters. George's education at Lambrook School would need to be supplemented with additional tutoring in Commonwealth history, international relations, and public speaking. The school's headmaster had already been discreetly approached and had expressed enthusiasm for supporting the young prince's expanded role. "We'll need to work closely with the Commonwealth Secretariat," William noted. Patricia Scotland has been incredibly supportive of the idea. She believes having a young royal actively engaged with Commonwealth youth could reinvigorate interest in the organization among younger generations. The strategic thinking behind the decision was clear. The Commonwealth, with its 54 member nations and 2.5 billion people, represented one of the monarchy's most important international relationships. However, many Commonwealth nations had younger populations who felt disconnected from traditional royal institutions. By positioning George as a youth ambassador, the palace hoped to create new bridges between the Crown and Commonwealth youth. Gray produced a detailed timeline from his folder. The first phase would begin in January 2025 with private tutorials on Commonwealth history and governance. By summer 2025, we would introduce George to select Commonwealth High Commissioners during private meetings at the palace. The public phase would begin in autumn 2025 with carefully choreographed appearances at Commonwealth-related events. The educational component was particularly important to Catherine, who had always taken an active role in her children's learning. "We want to ensure George understands not just the ceremonial aspects of his role, but the real impact the Commonwealth has on people's lives," she said. "He should learn about development projects, educational initiatives, and cultural exchanges. This isn't just about ribbon cutting and speeches." The conversation also touched on the reaction they expected from the media and the public. Royal expert commentary had been generally positive when hints about expanded roles for George had leaked earlier in the year. Many saw it as a natural evolution of the monarchy's approach to preparing future kings, while others appreciated the focus on Commonwealth relations during a period when some member nations were questioning their ties to the Crown. "The key is authenticity," William emphasized. "George needs to genuinely connect with this role, not just perform it. We've seen what happens when royal duties feel forced or artificial. The public, especially young people, can sense when something isn't genuine." As the morning meeting concluded, Gray outlined the next steps. A small working group would be established, including representatives from Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and the government's Foreign Office. This group would develop detailed protocols, security arrangements, and educational curricula for George's preparation. "We'll also need to consider the impact on Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis," Catherine noted as they prepared to adjourn. "They need to understand why George is taking on additional responsibilities and how it might affect family dynamics." The decision to prepare George for such a significant role reflected broader changes within the royal family's approach to monarchy in the 21st century. King Charles had long advocated for a more streamlined, purposeful royal family where each member had clearly defined roles that contributed meaningfully to the institution's mission. Later that afternoon, William and Catherine sat down with George himself in the family's private sitting room at Kensington Palace. The young prince listened intently as his parents explained the opportunity that lay before him. His questions were thoughtful and mature, focusing particularly on what the role would mean for his schooling and his relationships with his siblings. "Will I still be able to play football with my friends?" George asked, a concern that brought smiles to his parents' faces and reminded them that despite his royal destiny, he was still very much an 11-year-old boy. "Absolutely," William assured him. "This role is about adding to your life, not replacing it. You'll still go to school, still play sports, still be a normal child in many ways. But you'll also have the chance to meet incredible people from around the world and learn about different cultures and countries." George's response was characteristic of the thoughtful, measured approach his parents had observed in him over recent months. He asked for time to think about it, wanted to understand more about what the Commonwealth was and why it mattered, and requested to speak with some of the people who would be involved in his preparation. Over the following weeks, a series of informal conversations took place. George met with Commonwealth High Commissioners, spoke with young leaders from various member nations via video calls, and began reading age-appropriate materials about Commonwealth history and current activities. The transformation in George during this period was remarkable to observe. His natural curiosity about the world around him found new focus in learning about the diverse nations of the Commonwealth. He was particularly fascinated by the stories of young entrepreneurs, activists, and leaders from countries he had only known as names on a map. By December 2024, George had given his enthusiastic consent to take on the role of Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. His decision was informed, considered, and genuine, exactly what William and Catherine had hoped for. The formal announcement would come in early 2025, but the real work of preparation was already beginning. The palace machinery, well practiced in managing major royal initiatives, swung into action. Protocol experts began reviewing centuries-old procedures and adapting them for modern circumstances. Security specialists developed new protection strategies suitable for a young royal taking on international responsibilities. Educational consultants designed learning programs that would prepare George for his expanding role while ensuring his normal childhood development continued unimpeded. As 2024 drew to a close, the pieces were falling into place for what would become one of the most significant developments in royal protocol in decades. Prince George, still just 11 years old, was about to embark on a journey that would fundamentally shape his understanding of his future role as king while potentially transforming the Commonwealth's relationship with younger generations around the world. The secret meetings, careful planning, and thoughtful preparation were all building toward a moment that would mark the beginning of George's public life as a working member of the royal family. It was a responsibility that would challenge him, educate him, and ultimately prepare him for the even greater responsibilities that lay ahead in his future as king. The new year of 2025 brought unprecedented changes to Prince George's daily routine. While his classmates at Lambrook School settled back into their normal schedules after the Christmas holidays, George found himself balancing regular lessons with an entirely new curriculum designed specifically for his expanding royal role. 3 mornings each week, before the school day began, a small team of tutors would arrive at Kensington Palace. The main tutor was Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, a respected Commonwealth scholar from Oxford University who had spent decades studying the evolution of the modern Commonwealth. She brought with her a wealth of knowledge and an infectious enthusiasm for the subject that quickly captured George's attention. The Commonwealth isn't just about countries that used to be part of the British Empire, Dr. Hartley explained during one of their early sessions, using an interactive map displayed on a large screen in the palace's education room. It's become something entirely different, a voluntary association of nations that choose to work together on common challenges. George was fascinated by the diversity of the 54 Commonwealth nations. From tiny island nations like Tuvalu with fewer than 12,000 people to massive countries like India with over 1.4 billion citizens, the Commonwealth represented an extraordinary range of cultures, economies, and political systems. Each nation had its own story of how it came to join and why it chose to remain part of this unique international organization. The educational approach was carefully crafted to engage an 11-year-old mind. Rather than dry lessons about constitutional history, George learned through stories of real people. He discovered Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan environmentalist who won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work planting trees and empowering women. He learned about Marcus Rashford's campaign against child hunger in the United Kingdom, which had resonated across Commonwealth nations dealing with similar challenges. Every Commonwealth nation has young people who are making a difference, Dr. Hartley would remind George. Your role will be to learn from them, support them, and help share their stories with the world. The technical aspects of his education were equally important. George began learning about international diplomacy, studying how nations communicate with each other and resolve disputes peacefully. He practiced public speaking with a coach who specialized in helping young people overcome stage fright and communicate effectively. Mrs. Sarah Jenkins, a former BBC presenter turned royal communications trainer, worked with George twice a week on developing his speaking skills. The key is to remember that you're having a conversation, even when you're speaking to a large crowd, she would tell him. Think about one person in that crowd and speak to them as if you're explaining something interesting you've just learned. The progress George made in these sessions was remarkable. His natural intelligence and curiosity, combined with the excellent communication skills he had observed in his parents, made him a quick learner. By March 2025, he was delivering short presentations about Commonwealth nations to his tutors with growing confidence and enthusiasm. Technology played a significant role in George's preparation. Through secure video connections, he began having conversations with young leaders from across the Commonwealth. These weren't formal interviews but casual chats designed to help him understand the perspectives and challenges of his generation in different parts of the world. One particularly memorable conversation was with Aisha Patel, a 16-year-old climate activist from Mumbai who had organized beach cleanups involving thousands of young volunteers. "We don't wait for adults to solve problems," she told George during their video call. "We see something that needs fixing, and we start working on it. Sometimes the adults end up helping us instead of the other way around." These conversations had a profound impact on George's understanding of his future role. He began to see the Commonwealth not as an abstract political concept but as a network of real people working on real problems that affected millions of lives. Physical preparation was also important. George's existing fitness routine was enhanced with activities designed to build stamina for long days of official duties. Swimming sessions at Buckingham Palace's pool were extended, and his tennis lessons were supplemented with exercises specifically designed to improve his posture and presence during formal occasions. The psychological preparation was handled with particular care. Dr. Sarah Chen, the child development specialist Catherine had consulted, worked with the family to ensure George maintained a healthy perspective on his expanding responsibilities. Regular check-ins monitored his stress levels, sleep patterns, and general emotional well-being. "The goal is to build confidence without creating pressure," Dr. Chen explained to William and Catherine during one of their monthly consultations. "George needs to understand that this role is an opportunity to learn and grow, not a burden or a test he might fail." Family dynamics required careful attention during this period. Princess Charlotte, 8 years old and naturally curious about her brother's special lessons, occasionally felt left out of George's expanding world. William and Catherine addressed this by involving all three children in family discussions about the Commonwealth and encouraging Charlotte and Louis to ask questions about George's new responsibilities. "Why does George get to meet people from other countries?" Charlotte asked during one family dinner. Catherine used the question as an opportunity to explain how each member of the royal family would eventually have different roles and responsibilities, just as each Commonwealth nation contributed different strengths to the organization. The spring of 2025 brought George's first semi-public engagement related to his Commonwealth role. During a private reception at Buckingham Palace for Commonwealth High Commissioners, George was introduced to several diplomatic representatives. This carefully orchestrated event allowed him to practice his conversation skills in a formal setting while remaining within the protective environment of the palace. The High Commissioner of Canada, Sarah Mitchell, was particularly impressed by George's questions about Canadian youth programs. He asked about our reconciliation efforts with Indigenous communities and how young people are involved in that process, she later reported to the Commonwealth Secretariat. His questions showed both genuine interest and surprising sophistication for someone his age. These interactions began to shape George's understanding of diplomacy and international relations. He learned that successful diplomatic conversations involved listening carefully, asking thoughtful questions, and finding common ground rather than simply stating positions. The summer holidays of 2025 provided an opportunity to expand George's learning beyond the formal classroom setting. Instead of a traditional family vacation, the Wales family embarked on a carefully planned tour of several Commonwealth nations. This trip, kept strictly private and away from media attention, allowed George to experience Commonwealth diversity firsthand. Their first stop was Barbados, where George met with young entrepreneurs who were using technology to solve local challenges. He visited a coral reef restoration project led by teenagers and participated in a beach cleanup alongside local students. The contrast between the formal education he had received and the practical reality of environmental challenges facing small island nations made a lasting impression. In New Zealand, George experienced a traditional Maori welcome ceremony and learned about Indigenous approaches to environmental conservation. Young Maori leaders shared their perspectives on balancing traditional knowledge with modern technology to address climate change challenges. The final stop was Ghana, where George visited schools supported by Commonwealth education initiatives and met with young activists working on literacy programs. The resilience and optimism of young people facing significant economic challenges while still pursuing their dreams reinforced his growing understanding of the Commonwealth's role in supporting youth development. Throughout the summer tour, George kept a detailed journal documenting his experiences and observations. This journal became a valuable resource for his continued education, and excerpts from it would later be shared with Commonwealth youth organizations as examples of cross-cultural learning. The return to regular schooling in September 2025 marked the beginning of George's final phase of preparation. His tutoring sessions now focused on specific skills he would need for his official debut as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. Protocol training intensified, covering everything from proper greeting procedures for different cultural contexts to understanding the nuances of international gift exchange. Language training also became more intensive. While George would conduct most of his activities in English, he began learning basic greetings and phrases in French, Hindi, Swahili, and other languages commonly spoken across Commonwealth nations. This preparation wasn't about fluency but about showing respect for linguistic diversity. The autumn of 2025 also brought George's first public appearances specifically related to his Commonwealth role. These carefully managed events allowed him to practice his skills while gradually introducing the public to his expanded responsibilities. His first speech, delivered at a Commonwealth Youth Forum in London, focused on the importance of young people learning from each other across cultural boundaries. The speech, lasting just 5 minutes, was the culmination of months of preparation. George spoke without notes, using techniques he had learned from his communications training to engage directly with his audience. His message was simple but powerful. Young people around the world shared similar hopes and dreams, and the Commonwealth provided a unique platform for them to support each other. The positive reaction to George's public debut exceeded all expectations. Commonwealth representatives praised his authenticity and natural communication style. Young people who attended the event expressed appreciation for having a royal family member closer to their own age who seemed genuinely interested in their perspectives and experiences. Media coverage of George's speech was generally positive, with royal correspondents noting his growing maturity and confidence. International press coverage focused on the symbolic importance of a young royal taking on Commonwealth responsibilities during a period when some member nations were re-evaluating their relationships with the monarchy. As 2025 drew to a close, George's transformation from a typical 11-year-old prince to a young royal ready to take on international responsibilities was remarkable. His knowledge of Commonwealth nations, their cultures, and their challenges had expanded dramatically. His communication skills had developed to the point where he could engage confidently with people of all ages and backgrounds. Most importantly, George had developed a genuine passion for his role. The Commonwealth was no longer just an abstract concept he was learning about for duty's sake. It had become a real network of relationships with people he cared about and causes he wanted to support. The intensive year of preparation was now complete. George had acquired the knowledge, skills, and confidence necessary for his official debut as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador at the 2026 Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Canada. The foundation had been laid for what promised to be a transformative experience, both for George personally and for the Commonwealth's relationship with its younger generation. The careful balance between rigorous preparation and normal childhood development had been maintained throughout the year. George remained an excellent student at Lambrook School, continued his sporting activities, and maintained close friendships with his classmates. The additional responsibilities had enhanced rather than diminished his childhood experience, giving him a broader perspective on the world while keeping him grounded in normal family life. The transformation taking place within the Wales household during 2025 extended far beyond Prince George's individual preparation. The entire family structure had to adapt to accommodate the young prince's expanding role while maintaining the careful balance between royal duty and normal family life that William and Catherine had always prioritized. Catherine found herself taking on an increasingly complex role as both mother and royal mentor. Her own experience joining the royal family as an outsider had given her unique insights into the challenges of adapting to royal life. Now, she was helping her eldest son navigate those same challenges, but at an age when such pressures could be particularly intense. The key is to help George understand that this role enhances who he is rather than defining who he must become, Catherine explained to her private secretary during one of their weekly planning sessions. He's still our son first, still a boy who loves football and gets excited about family game nights. The Commonwealth role is something he's adding to his life, not something that's taking over his life. This philosophy guided every decision the family made during George's preparation period. When scheduling conflicts arose between royal training and family activities, the family activities took precedence. When George showed signs of stress about upcoming speeches or meetings, the schedule was adjusted to ensure he had adequate downtime and normal childhood experiences. William brought his own perspective to George's preparation, drawing from his memories of gradually taking on royal responsibilities. However, he was also acutely aware that George's experience was fundamentally different from his own. "When I was George's age, the world was very different," William reflected during a private conversation with his father, King Charles. Social media didn't exist, international travel was less common, and the expectations placed on young royals were different. The king's own experience preparing for royal duties provided valuable guidance for the family. Charles remembered the isolation he had sometimes felt as a young prince, the pressure of constant scrutiny, and the challenge of balancing personal interests with royal obligations. His advice to William and Catherine consistently emphasized the importance of allowing George to maintain strong friendships and pursue personal interests alongside his royal responsibilities. "The Commonwealth role should broaden George's horizons, not narrow them," King Charles said during one of their regular grandfather-grandson conversations. These informal chats, which took place during weekend visits to Windsor or Balmoral, became an important part of George's preparation. The king shared stories from his own extensive Commonwealth travels and helped George understand the historical context of the modern Commonwealth. Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis required particular attention during this period. As George's role expanded, there was a natural concern that his siblings might feel overshadowed or excluded. Catherine and William addressed this proactively by involving all three children in family discussions about the Commonwealth and ensuring that Charlotte and Louis understood the unique contributions they would eventually make to the royal family. Charlotte, with her natural confidence and quick wit, often asked challenging questions during family discussions about George's preparation. "Will I get to travel to all those countries too?" she asked during one dinner conversation. Her parents used such questions as opportunities to discuss how each member of the royal family developed their own areas of expertise and interest. "You'll find your own special ways to help people and represent our country," William told her. "Maybe you'll focus on different countries or different causes. The important thing is that we all work together as a team." Louis, at 6 years old, was less concerned with the formal aspects of George's preparation but was fascinated by the stories his brothers shared about young people from different countries. His questions often provided moments of levity that helped keep the family discussions grounded in normal childhood curiosity rather than overwhelming formality. The extended royal family also played important roles in supporting George's development. Prince Edward and Sophie, with their extensive Commonwealth connections through Edward's work with the Duke of Edinburgh's award, provided valuable insights into youth engagement across member nations. Their daughter Lady Louise Windsor, despite being several years older than George, offered a helpful perspective on balancing normal teenage activities with royal responsibilities. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach to royal duties, became an important mentor for George. Her decades of international work and reputation for authentic engagement with people from all backgrounds provided excellent examples of effective royal representation. During several informal conversations at family gatherings, she shared practical advice about maintaining energy during long official days and connecting genuinely with people from different cultures. The household staff at Kensington Palace also adapted to support George's expanded role. His protection officers received additional training in international security protocols and cultural sensitivity. The palace's communications team developed new procedures for managing George's public appearances while maintaining appropriate privacy boundaries for a young royal. Educational support extended beyond the formal tutoring sessions. Lambrook School worked closely with the palace to ensure George's regular academic progress wasn't compromised by his additional responsibilities. His teachers were briefed on his Commonwealth preparation so they could incorporate relevant discussions into regular lessons when appropriate. The school's headmaster, Jonathan Perry, proved to be an invaluable ally in maintaining George's normal childhood experience. "Our goal is to ensure that George continues to be challenged academically and socially in the same way as any other student," Perry explained during meetings with the palace education team. His royal responsibilities should complement his school experience, not overshadow it. George's classmates adapted to his expanding role with the typical resilience of children. While they were aware that their friend was taking on additional responsibilities, the changes in his daily routine were gradual enough that his relationships with friends remained stable. The school's culture of discretion meant that George's royal activities were rarely discussed in detail, allowing him to maintain normal friendships. Sports continued to play a crucial role in George's life during this period. Football remained his primary passion, and his parents ensured that training sessions and matches took priority over all but the most essential royal activities. His teammates and coaches provided him with an important connection to normal childhood experiences and helped keep his expanded royal role in perspective. The family's approach to managing media attention evolved during this preparation period. While George had always been protected from excessive public exposure, his expanding role required new strategies for managing legitimate public interest while maintaining appropriate privacy. Catherine and William worked closely with their communications team to develop guidelines that would allow for necessary publicity around George's Commonwealth activities while protecting his private family life. Social media management became particularly important as George approached his public debut as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. The palace's digital team developed strategies for sharing appropriate content about George's activities while maintaining strict controls over his personal privacy. The goal was to build public understanding and support for his role without turning him into a social media personality. Family traditions evolved to accommodate George's expanding knowledge of international affairs. Family dinners often included discussions about current events in Commonwealth nations, giving all three children opportunities to learn about global issues in an age-appropriate context. These conversations helped normalize George's growing expertise while ensuring his siblings remained engaged with international topics. The Christmas holidays of 2025 provided an opportunity for reflection on the changes the family had experienced during George's preparation year. Despite the intensive training and expanded responsibilities, the family dynamics remained fundamentally the same. George was still the big brother who helped Louis with difficult puzzles and engaged in friendly competition with Charlotte over board games. However, there were subtle changes that reflected George's growing maturity and expanded worldview. His questions during family conversations became more sophisticated, often incorporating perspectives he had learned from young people in different Commonwealth nations. His natural curiosity about the world had been channeled into a genuine passion for understanding different cultures and international challenges. Catherine noticed that George had developed a particular talent for asking thoughtful questions that encouraged people to share their experiences and perspectives. This skill, which would prove invaluable in his royal role, also enhanced his relationships within the family. He became particularly good at drawing out stories from his grandparents and other relatives about their own experiences with international travel and cultural differences. William observed that George's confidence in formal situations had grown significantly without affecting his natural personality. The boy who could now deliver a polished speech to a room full of diplomats was still the same child who got excited about scoring goals during weekend football matches with his father. The support network that developed around George during his preparation extended beyond the immediate family to include trusted advisors, educators, and security personnel who understood the unique challenges of preparing a young royal for international responsibilities. This team worked together to ensure that George's development remained balanced and healthy throughout the intensive preparation period. As 2025 concluded and 2026 approached, the Wales family had successfully adapted to the new dynamics created by George's expanding role. The careful balance between royal duty and normal family life had been maintained, even strengthened, by the shared commitment to supporting George's development while preserving the close family relationships that formed the foundation of his security and happiness. The preparation period had demonstrated that it was possible for a young royal to take on significant international responsibilities without sacrificing the normal childhood experiences that would keep him grounded and connected to the people he would one day serve. The family's approach had created a model that could guide future generations of young royals as they prepared for their own roles within the modern monarchy. Looking ahead to George's official debut as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador, the family felt confident that they had created the right foundation for his success. The intensive preparation had been balanced with careful attention to his emotional and psychological well-being, ensuring that he approached his expanded role with enthusiasm and confidence rather than anxiety or pressure. The transformation of the Wales family during this period reflected broader changes taking place within the modern royal family. The traditional model of royal childhood, which often involved isolation from normal experiences until formal adult responsibilities began, had been replaced with a more integrated approach that prepared young royals for their future roles while maintaining their connection to contemporary life and peer relationships. As 2026 dawned, the scope of preparations for Prince George's debut as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador extended far beyond the walls of Kensington Palace. Across 54 Commonwealth nations, governments, youth organizations, and diplomatic missions were coordinating what would become one of the most significant international youth engagement initiatives in recent decades. The Commonwealth Secretariat headquarters in London had become a hub of activity as Secretary-General Patricia Scotland and her team worked to ensure that George's role would have meaningful impact across all member nations. The challenge was substantial: how to create opportunities for a 12-year-old prince to engage authentically with young people from vastly different cultures, economic circumstances, and political systems. This isn't about creating photo opportunities, Secretary-General Scotland emphasized during a planning meeting with senior Commonwealth officials. Prince George's role must contribute genuine value to Commonwealth youth engagement. We're not just putting a young royal face on existing programs, we're creating new pathways for youth participation and leadership. The preparation involved extensive consultation with youth leaders from across the Commonwealth. Through secure video conferences, focus groups, and detailed surveys, young people from Lagos to London, from Kingston to Kuala Lumpur, shared their perspectives on what they wanted from royal engagement with their generation. Maya Sharma, an 18-year-old climate activist from Delhi, participated in one of these consultation sessions. "We don't want someone who just shows up and gives speeches," she explained during a video call with Commonwealth officials. "We want someone who will listen to our ideas, understand our challenges, and help amplify our voices on the global stage." These consultations revealed common themes across Commonwealth youth. They wanted authentic engagement rather than ceremonial appearances. They valued environmental action, educational opportunities, and economic empowerment. Most importantly, they wanted to be heard and taken seriously as contributors to solutions rather than simply recipients of adult guidance. The Canadian government, as host of the 2026 Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, worked closely with Buckingham Palace to design George's participation in the summit. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, drawing from his own experience growing up in the public eye, advocated for an approach that would challenge George appropriately while protecting his well-being. "We have a unique opportunity to show young people around the world that their voices matter at the highest levels of international diplomacy," Trudeau explained during a confidential video call with Prince William. "But we must ensure that Prince George feels supported and prepared for what will be an intensive experience." The Canadian youth delegation to the Commonwealth Summit underwent their own preparation process, working with mentors to develop presentations and proposals they would share with George and other young leaders during the meeting. These preparations ensured that George would encounter well-prepared, articulate young people ready to engage in substantive discussions about issues affecting their generation. Australia's contribution to George's preparation involved connecting him with young Indigenous leaders who were working on cultural preservation and environmental protection projects. Through virtual reality technology, George was able to experience traditional land management practices and understand how ancient wisdom was being applied to modern environmental challenges. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the University of Sydney, who coordinated Australia's youth engagement program, noted the sophisticated level of George's questions during these virtual sessions. He asked about the relationship between traditional knowledge and modern technology, about how young Indigenous leaders balance cultural responsibilities with contemporary challenges. His questions showed real depth of understanding. New Zealand's preparation focused on youth leadership development and democratic participation. Young Kiwi leaders shared their experiences with local government participation and community organizing, providing George with examples of how his generation could contribute to democratic processes and policy development. African Commonwealth nations coordinated their preparation through the African Union's youth development programs. Young entrepreneurs, activists, and leaders from countries including Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, and Nigeria developed a comprehensive presentation on innovation, technology, and economic development initiatives led by African youth. Amara Okafor, a 19-year-old tech entrepreneur from Lagos, would later describe her preparation for meeting George. "We wanted to show him that young Africans aren't waiting for help, we're creating solutions to our own challenges and contributing to global innovation." We prepared examples of African-led startups, environmental projects, and social enterprises that are making real differences in our communities. The Caribbean Commonwealth nations focused their preparation on climate change resilience and sustainable development. Young leaders from island nations particularly emphasized the urgency of environmental challenges and the innovative solutions their generation was developing to address rising sea levels and extreme weather events. Pacific Commonwealth nations, despite their small populations, contributed unique perspectives on ocean conservation and sustainable fisheries management. Young leaders from countries like Vanuatu, Samoa, and the Solomon Islands prepared presentations on traditional ocean management practices and modern conservation technology. Security coordination for Georgia's international debut required unprecedented cooperation between multiple agencies. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police worked with Scotland Yard, Commonwealth Nation Security Services, and international intelligence agencies to ensure comprehensive protection for the young prince and the young leaders he would meet. The security planning had to balance protection with accessibility, ensuring that George could engage authentically with young people while maintaining appropriate safety measures. New protocols were developed for managing crowds, securing venues, and coordinating transportation across multiple countries during Georgia's Commonwealth activities. Technology played a crucial role in the global preparations. The Commonwealth Secretariat developed new digital platforms specifically for youth engagement, allowing young people from member nations to share their stories, projects, and ideas with George before, during, and after formal meetings. The development of these technological solutions involved input from young programmers and designers from across the Commonwealth. Their work created user-friendly interfaces that could accommodate different languages, internet connectivity levels, and technological capabilities across member nations. Educational institutions across the Commonwealth incorporated George's upcoming role into their curricula, using his preparation as a case study for students learning about international relations, diplomacy, and youth leadership. Universities developed research projects examining the impact of royal youth engagement on Commonwealth relations. Dr. James Harrison from the London School of Economics led a research initiative studying the historical precedents for George's role and the potential long-term impacts on Commonwealth youth engagement. His preliminary findings suggested that authentic royal youth leadership could significantly enhance young people's connection to Commonwealth institutions and values. Media organizations across Commonwealth nations began developing coverage plans that would highlight youth perspectives and achievements rather than focusing solely on royal protocol and ceremony. This approach aligned with the overall strategy of using George's role to amplify youth voices rather than overshadow them. Training programs for journalists covering George's activities emphasized the importance of respectful coverage that protected his privacy while accurately reporting on the substance of his Commonwealth work. International media guidelines were developed to ensure consistent, appropriate coverage across different media markets. Cultural preparation became increasingly important as the scale of Georgia's international engagement became clear. Language tutors from across the Commonwealth worked with George to develop basic conversational skills in multiple languages, while cultural advisors helped him understand appropriate greetings, gift exchanges, and social customs for different regions. The gift preparation process alone required months of planning. Traditional Commonwealth protocol required careful attention to appropriate gifts for different cultural contexts, but George's age and role required new approaches to these ancient customs. Artisans and young creators from across the Commonwealth collaborated to create meaningful exchanges that would reflect contemporary youth culture while respecting traditional diplomatic practices. Youth organizations across Commonwealth nations used Georgia's upcoming role as a catalyst for their own leadership development programs. The anticipation of meaningful engagement with a young royal motivated increased participation in youth councils, environmental groups, and social enterprises across member nations. The ripple effects of preparation extended to local communities throughout the Commonwealth. Schools organized Commonwealth awareness programs, community groups developed cultural exchange initiatives, and local governments created new opportunities for youth participation in decision-making processes. Religious and community leaders across the Commonwealth's diverse faith traditions prepared guidance for young people on engaging respectfully with royal representatives while maintaining their own cultural and religious identities. These preparations emphasized the Commonwealth's commitment to diversity and mutual respect. As the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting approached, the extensive preparation network that had developed around George's role represented unprecedented coordination between governments, youth organizations, educational institutions, and civil society groups across 54 nations. The success of these preparations would be measured not just by the smooth execution of George's official duties, but by the long-term impact on youth engagement across the Commonwealth. The goal was to create sustainable pathways for young people to participate meaningfully in Commonwealth institutions and decision-making processes. The global preparation effort had already achieved significant success by creating new networks of communication and collaboration between youth organizations across different Commonwealth regions. These networks would continue to operate long after George's initial debut, providing ongoing platforms for youth leadership and cultural exchange. The international coordination required for George's role had also strengthened relationships between Commonwealth institutions and member nation governments, demonstrating the continued relevance of Commonwealth cooperation in addressing contemporary challenges. As the final weeks of preparation approached, the global network supporting George's debut represented one of the most comprehensive international youth engagement initiatives ever undertaken. The careful planning, extensive consultation, and commitment to authentic engagement had created a foundation for transformative experiences that would impact young people across the Commonwealth for years to come. The morning of June 15, 2026, dawned clear and bright in Ottawa, Canada, as the most anticipated Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in decades prepared to welcome its youngest official delegate. Prince George, now 12 years old and poised beyond his years, stood at the window of his hotel suite overlooking the Rideau Canal, watching early morning joggers and cyclists begin their day in the Canadian capital. 18 months of intensive preparation had led to this moment. The extensive education, careful cultural training, and gradual introduction to international responsibilities would now be tested on the global stage as George officially began his role as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. The significance of the day extended far beyond personal milestone. Representatives from 54 Commonwealth nations had gathered in Ottawa not just for traditional diplomatic discussions, but to witness a historic evolution in how the monarchy engaged with younger generations across the Commonwealth. The precedent George was setting would influence royal protocol for generations to come. Catherine helped George with his ceremonial morning dress, a carefully designed outfit that balanced royal tradition with contemporary youth appeal. The navy blue suit incorporated subtle Commonwealth symbols and was tailored to be both dignified and age-appropriate. Every detail had been considered to ensure George looked appropriately formal while remaining recognizably a 12-year-old boy. "Remember," William said as the family prepared to leave for the convention center, "today isn't about being perfect. It's about being yourself and showing genuine interest in the people you'll meet. The young leaders you're meeting today have been looking forward to this as much as you have." The first event of George's historic day was a private breakfast meeting with young Commonwealth leaders aged 16 to 25 from across member nations. The intimate setting at the Château Laurier Hotel allowed for informal conversation away from media attention, giving George an opportunity to settle into his role before the more formal proceedings began. Around the breakfast table sat an extraordinary group of young people. There was Kwame Asante from Ghana, who had developed a mobile app connecting rural farmers with urban markets. Priya Singh from India shared her work organizing educational programs for girls in remote villages. Maria Santos from Barbados described her coral reef restoration project that was being replicated across the Caribbean. "Your Royal Highness," said Kwame as George took his seat, "we've all been wondering what questions you might have for us. We know you've been learning about our countries, but we're curious about your perspective on the challenges we're facing." George's response demonstrated the maturity and genuine curiosity that had developed during his preparation. "I've been reading about climate change impacts across different Commonwealth regions," he said, "but I'd like to understand from your experiences how environmental challenges are affecting opportunities for people our age. Are you seeing more or fewer possibilities for the kinds of work you want to do?" The question sparked an animated discussion that lasted throughout the breakfast. George listened intently as young leaders shared stories of adaptation, innovation, and resilience in the face of environmental and economic challenges. His follow-up questions showed both his preparation and his natural ability to engage with complex topics. Dr. Sarah Chen, observing from a discreet distance, later noted that George displayed exactly the kind of authentic engagement the preparation team had hoped to develop. He wasn't performing a role, she observed. He was genuinely interested in learning from these remarkable young people. Following the breakfast, George's official program began with the opening ceremony of the Youth Forum that had been specially created for the Ottawa meeting. The ceremony took place in the Canadian Museum of History, with its soaring architecture providing a dramatic backdrop for what would become a defining moment in Commonwealth youth engagement. As George was introduced to the assembly of nearly 200 young Commonwealth leaders, the applause was warm and sustained. However, it was his opening remarks that truly captured the audience's attention and set the tone for everything that would follow. "I'm honored to be here with all of you," George began, speaking without notes from a podium adjusted to his height. "For the past 18 months, I've been learning about the Commonwealth from books, from teachers, and from video calls with young leaders. But I know that real understanding comes from listening to your stories and learning from your experiences." He paused, looking directly at different sections of the audience as his communications training had taught him. "I'm here not because I have answers to the challenges you're facing, but because I believe that young people across the Commonwealth have incredible ideas that world leaders need to hear. My role is to help make sure those ideas reach the people who can support and implement them." The speech, lasting just 7 minutes, received a standing ovation. More importantly, it immediately established George as a genuine participant in the Youth Forum rather than a ceremonial figurehead. The authenticity of his engagement was evident to everyone present. The first substantive session George participated in focused on environmental innovation across Commonwealth small island developing states. Young leaders from nations facing existential threats from climate change shared their adaptation strategies and asked for support in scaling up successful initiatives. George's contributions to the discussion reflected his preparation but went beyond rehearsed talking points. When a young leader from the Maldives described challenges accessing funding for renewable energy projects, George asked about the specific barriers to international financing and whether similar challenges existed in other island nations. His questions prompted a broader discussion about the structural challenges young innovators faced in accessing resources and support. By the end of the session, participants had identified specific recommendations for Commonwealth institutions to better support youth-led environmental initiatives. The afternoon brought George's most challenging event, a formal presentation to the full Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Walking into the main conference hall, where prime ministers, presidents, and senior officials from 54 nations were gathered, would have been intimidating for anyone, let alone a 12-year-old. George's presentation focused on the themes that had emerged from his morning interactions with young Commonwealth leaders. He spoke about the innovation and resilience he had witnessed, the common challenges young people faced across different regions, and specific recommendations for enhanced Commonwealth support for youth initiatives. "The young leaders I've met today aren't asking for charity," George told the assembled heads of government. "They're asking for opportunities to contribute. They have solutions to problems that affect all our nations, but they need pathways to share those solutions and resources to implement them." His recommendations were specific and well-researched. He proposed the creation of a Commonwealth Youth Innovation Fund, enhanced digital platforms for sharing successful youth initiatives across member nations, and formal mechanisms for youth input into Commonwealth policy development. The response from heads of government was remarkably positive. Several leaders spoke immediately after George's presentation, committing their governments to supporting the initiatives he had outlined. Prime Minister Trudeau announced Canada's intention to provide seed funding for the Youth Innovation Fund, while the Prime Minister of Jamaica committed to hosting the first Commonwealth Youth Leadership Summit. The impact of George's presentation extended beyond the immediate commitments. For the first time in Commonwealth history, youth perspectives had been presented directly to heads of government by someone closer to the age of the young people being represented. The authenticity and substance of George's advocacy created a new model for youth engagement in international diplomacy. The evening brought a cultural celebration that allowed George to experience the diversity of Commonwealth traditions in a more relaxed setting. Young performers from across the Commonwealth showcased music, dance, and artistic traditions that reflected the organization's incredible cultural richness. George participated enthusiastically in the cultural exchanges, learning traditional dances from several Caribbean nations and attempting to play instruments from different African and Pacific cultures. His willingness to engage with unfamiliar traditions while maintaining his natural personality endeared him to young participants from across the Commonwealth. During the cultural evening, George had numerous informal conversations with young leaders, parents, and government officials. These interactions provided insights into how different cultures approached youth development and leadership preparation. Many participants shared their own stories of balancing cultural traditions with contemporary challenges. The media coverage of George's debut exceeded all expectations in terms of both volume and tone. International news organizations highlighted the substance of his presentations and the positive response from both youth participants and government officials. Commentary focused on the successful integration of youth voices into high-level diplomatic proceedings. Crucially, the coverage also maintained appropriate respect for George's privacy and age. The media guidelines developed during the preparation period proved effective in encouraging substantive reporting while protecting the young prince from excessive personal scrutiny. Social media response was overwhelmingly positive, with young people from across the Commonwealth sharing their own stories and initiatives in response to George's advocacy. The hashtag Commonwealth Youth Voices trended globally as young leaders shared videos and posts about their work in their communities. The final day of George's Ottawa program included one-on-one meetings with young leaders from each Commonwealth region. These private conversations allowed for deeper discussions about specific challenges and opportunities in different parts of the world. Perhaps the most meaningful moment came during his conversation with Amara Okafor, the young tech entrepreneur from Lagos. "Your questions made me think differently about how to present African innovations to international audiences," she told George. "You helped me realize that we don't need to ask for help, we need to offer partnerships." This exchange captured the essence of what George's role was intended to achieve: authentic engagement that benefited young Commonwealth leaders while educating the young prince about the realities facing his generation across different cultures and economic circumstances. As George's historic debut concluded, the impact was already being felt across Commonwealth institutions. The Youth Innovation Fund he had proposed received commitments totaling over $50 million from member governments and private foundations. The digital platforms for youth engagement saw immediate spikes in registration and activity. More importantly, the precedent George had set for youth engagement in Commonwealth diplomacy created new expectations and opportunities for ongoing youth participation in international affairs. The success of his authentic, substance-focused approach demonstrated that meaningful intergenerational collaboration was possible in formal diplomatic settings. The return flight to London provided an opportunity for reflection on the transformative experience George had completed. The 18 months of preparation had culminated in a debut that exceeded all expectations while maintaining the careful balance between royal duty and normal adolescent development that William and Catherine had prioritized throughout the process. As the plane crossed the Atlantic, George was already planning follow-up engagements with the young leaders he had met in Ottawa. The connections formed during his historic debut would continue through ongoing digital exchanges, collaborative projects, and future meetings that would deepen his understanding of Commonwealth youth perspectives and challenges. The historic debut of Prince George as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador had successfully launched a new era of youth engagement in international diplomacy. The careful preparation, authentic execution, and positive reception had created a sustainable foundation for ongoing royal youth leadership that would influence Commonwealth relations for decades to come.